Hello and welcome to the 2 Minute Drill Podcast. I'm Michael Rochman, that's Dean Bruce. And today we have finally switched over to the defensive side of the football. We're talking about the interior defensive linemen, a generational class for this 2025 NFL draft. There are plenty of talented names that are likely going to be decorating the early parts of the first round when we get to April. But before we dive into any of it, Dean, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to break this class down. I see a lot of really high potential guys on this list. I think there's just a lot of athleticism and even I would say a decent bit of production for interior line this year. I'm excited to discuss the class.
Yeah, plenty of potential. And, we got 12 that we're talking about as the sort of consensus favorites right now as the top 12 in the class. Not necessarily how we rank our exact top 12, but these guys in this order. So without further ado, we might as well get started. And the first one that we're going to be talking about is our 12th ranked guy, Dante Corleone, defensive tackle out of Cincinnati, a guy that many were talking about for the 2024 NFL draft, opted to return to the Bearcats for another season. 6'1", 320 pounds. This is a guy that is operating both out of nose tackle, pre-tech for the Bearcats. And he kind of has that versatility at the college level to where you can be excited about him. I think he's got a weird frame, being 6'1" as a nose tackle, or at least on the interior, that's going to work against you. You kind of need that next level athleticism. He made the Feldman Streaks list, so maybe there is a necessary part of that is going to kind of show up. But on tape, I felt like it was a little bit lacking. What were your thoughts on Corleone when you were watching?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched him 2 years now. I thought both times he was a little sluggish. I was a little surprised he made it on that Feldman's freak list. I don't know. I just didn't see a lot of like great stuff with him. He doesn't really have a standout trait for me. I felt like his hands kind of middling to average. His leg drive didn't really get there. He's stubby as hell because he's 6'1", like just sort of the way it's going to be if you're that size. I don't even think he's got plus mass for a nose tackle, so he's going to probably have to switch to three, which I don't know how much that's going to work for him because he's just not that great of a gap. Like he's not that great of a gap stuffer, so moving to three tech kind of makes sense. But he doesn't go into his pass rush with a plan. I don't know. I kind of liked him as a finisher. Like just in general, I felt like his reps, he was generally fighting to the end. I didn't see him give up on a lot of stuff. And I know PFF really likes him. PFF had a big time grade on this guy early last year, which is why I think he got on the radar of so many media guys. But I don't know. I just never saw it with him. I even thought he could be smaller than 6'1", if I'm being completely honest. And he had the whole blood clot thing this summer come up with his health. I hope he's recovered well from that so he gets to play well this season. But I think you got to worry about how that like lack of practice over the season is going to translate to gameplay. I don't know. I think he's kind of been dealt a bad hand, and I think he's a little overhyped for where his seat's at. But if he can show some of that athleticism this year, it could turn around pretty easily.
Yeah, and with the blood clots, he's probably lost a little bit of weight, I would imagine. So maybe that'll help his transition over to more of a three tech type where he's going to utilize that athleticism that's been talked about. I thought he was pretty disruptive. He got into the backfield pretty well, and I thought that was working for him. There is the issue of finishing, but I did like his hand a little bit more than you did. I thought there was some nice flashes of power and just ability to kind of be, disruptive to the blocks and sort of get into the backfield, find the football, and maybe make a play. He's a guy that has built up experience and has shown the ability to kind of produce. It's now just trying to build that up into translatable ways to the NFL. Right now, I have him as a later day 3 type pick. It wouldn't shock me if it goes either direction, but yeah, just not super high on him compared to the rest of the 11 others on this list.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think that's about the range where I'd have him, somewhere fifth range.
Yeah, so moving forward now to the next defensive lineman on our list, and that's Jay Toya, the defensive line nose tackle, 6'2", 338-pound defender for the UCLA Bruins. What were your thoughts when watching Toya?
I mean, I thought he was pretty cool. I don't see a like top end guy that I think he's getting sort of hyped as, but I could see him as sort of like a quiet riser throughout the year. He was very explosive. I felt like his athletic traits were very strong. Like he sort of like he bounces off at the line and he sort of gets his hands moving pretty quickly and he's able to rocket like interior linemen back pretty well. I think at times he needed a little bit more like technical refinement. I think he's coasting off of that initial explosion a little bit there. Every once in a while, I'd like catch him. He'd try to do a chop move. It just isn't executed very well. I think he wants to have a plan, and I think he's sort of developing this bag right now because I think until pretty recently he wasn't getting as much in the rotation as like he was probably hoping for. He's only he was a 3-year junior last year. He's coming into his senior year. I think he's getting some reps in the location or the rotation. But he's also been pretty versatile in terms of alignment. I felt like I saw him get some snaps as a nose tackle and do some run stuffing where I thought he was solid, and he's also just a very explosive pass rush guy just in general. So when he lined up at the 5 tech, it was pretty solid. But I don't know, I wasn't like super sold on him as a top end guy, like first round type, but I could see him sneaking up there later in the discussion if he can sort of build on these like impressive explosive traits that he had going and sort of like, play his way into sort of a day 2 selection that's, got a lot of upside. I felt like he's probably going to be a guy who does pretty well in the athletic testing game and becomes sort of a riser later in the process. And if he can pair that with some technical refinement, I'm excited about his game. I thought he was a very intriguing prospect, especially a guy who I hadn't really heard much about until like upcoming for this.
Yeah, for me, he kind of matches that McKinley Jackson, Tyler Shelvin type of mold. So he's going to be a Bengal, obviously. But, I think this is someone that has pretty nice ability to kind of run stuff, fill the gaps in the middle, and really take on blocks pretty well. He's someone that I, I don't really see moving up the board similar to you. I think that the NFL tends to lean more towards guys that have the athleticism or the ability to operate as a pass rusher. And I don't think Toya is ever going to be that guy. And that's not necessarily a flaw on him. It's just sometimes that's not what you're getting out of your certain prototypes on the defensive line. And Toya fills that nose tackle role where you're having him anchor down the middle, close up gaps, and prevent big runs up the gap. So I don't know. He's someone that I think is going to be dependable, and I wouldn't be surprised if he lasts in the NFL for a while. But I just don't see him necessarily being like the pass rusher or explosive playmaker that you're looking for in some of the other defensive linemen. So there's been some hype for him. He's kind of high up boards, but I think overall he's going to be someone we see more as a consistent, steady, late day 2, maybe day 3 type of guy.
I liked McKinley Jackson a lot last year. I always end up like falling for these big nose tackle types who I feel like have this explosiveness for their size. So wouldn't shock me if you're right about that, if the McKinley Jackson comparisons hold up.
Yeah, so moving now to number 10, and that is Alfred Collins, the defensive tackle for the Texas Longhorns. Kind of operated between defensive end and on the inside. He's got that is 6'6", 319 pounds, has solid versatility, solid athleticism. He's a very fun hybrid guy, and I think there's someone easy to kind of track that had that same Texas pipeline and O'Menahue, where I think you're kind of looking for him to kind of accomplish a similar level of success at the NFL. It's something that I think will come with growing pains, and it's something we've been waiting on Collins for a while to kind of take those next steps. But there is still that lack of next step that has not really come forward in his college career to kind of show that progression and really elevate him into the top of the draft class. Now I believe this is his 5th year in college as a senior, and we're kind of waiting on it still. It could easily happen, and teams could still easily buy in, but I do think there's a lack of that elite level play that kind of holds him down compared to some of the other defensive tackles in this class.
Yeah, I feel like for a while now we've been talking about him as like a potential first rounder, a potential guy because he's big, long, and strong. But what's that saying? If my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike. Like we've sort of been waiting on this like big step from him for a while, and like maybe this will be his year where he's finally going into like he's kind of the lone guy on that like Texas defensive line who is like, like coveted prospect. I mean, we're looking at like Baron Swirl, I think, left on that line. I guess Ethan Burke still hanging around Texas, but those guys I feel like still haven't gotten the juice that Collins has been getting over the years. But I mean, I liked his pass rush potential. I feel like he's shown flashes of being a guy who can get sacks pretty consistently. I mean, he's been playing hybrid for so long that like it feels like it's helped him develop a set of pass rush moves. But I think he's kind of been a limited run stopper for his entire career. And I think he's never really found a way to get good leverage on like offensive linemen. And it's sort of been why I think we haven't seen him transition into the NFL just yet. I think he's sort of been a like guy we're talking about maybe being a potential upside play in every sort of like draft conversation. I feel like I've been hearing about him since 2022. But I think like it could be his year, but I'm a little tired of waiting on it. I think he'll probably just sort of be that kind of guy who ends up in day 2 because of some really freaky size stuff and like good athletic traits. But ultimately, I think he's probably going to just sort of be a pass rush specialist in the NFL who probably ends up sticking at defensive tackle, but if he gets some run at edge, it wouldn't shock me. Maybe his size will do him better there, and it'll be overwhelming in the grand scheme of things. But I don't know. I feel like we've sort of been waiting on him for a while, and the time hasn't come. So I don't know. I'm not super hyped on him these days.
Yeah, he was working on a defensive line that had Devondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. So there was opportunity for him to succeed, but now I think he's going to have more of an interior role this year, and we'll see how he handles it. I think he's someone that has potential. Now it's just really kind of making it happen because everyone can have potential, but there needs to be those next steps. But moving forward now to someone that we haven't really seen on the field as much, Damonte Capehart, defensive tackle for the Clemson Tigers, a guy that has not started many games in his career. Actually, I'm not sure if he has started yet for the Tigers. And 6'4", 320 pounds, a nose tackle that is very exciting, can really fill the gaps, fire off the ball. I thought he had a really nice release at the snap, and is something that I think can help him when it comes to making an impact at the point of attack against his blockers. He's very exciting, but there is still just so much left to be understood about his game. What were your thoughts on Capehart when watching him?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year is really gonna say whether he makes it into if he's gonna be like a big time guy like the Brian Bruzzies and like the Quinn, not Quinton Williams, that's an Alabama guy. The other one,
Christian
Cleveland Farrell,
Wilkins.
I guess. Say again.
Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins. There we go. I was trying to rotate through that draft class and just landed on the wrong guy. But I mean, we talk about Clemson defensive linemen every year because they're they're known as sort of a DL factory. And last year we had Ruka who sort of wasn't quite at the level of like the Bruzzy and Murphy types in terms of hype. But I mean, Capehart's coming into that role. And I mean, obviously he has limited experience as a starter. We gotta knock that down because of that. And I think at times he was a little bit of a when he got those snaps, he was a little bit lackadaisical in terms of technical refinement because again, he's not getting a ton of experience in the game yet. This is going to be his first year as what we're hoping to see as a full-time starter. And like as far as that goes, he's built to be the type of guy we're talking about in the like Miles Murphy, Brian Bruzzy range. He's what, 6'4", 320. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the height, and he's got these violent hands. He like just pushes guys down. Like when he gets these rotational snaps, I feel like he really flashed. There's a reason that we're talking about him despite him only being a rotational player for that Clemson defensive line, but he's still got that limited experience as a starter. He had the gun arrest earlier in the year that I think is going to loom large over his draft stock. I think he could probably turn it around. I mean, Dabo usually is able to get a good head on these guys' shoulders for like prime stuff. And if he's like, willing to let Capehart back on the team, I think there's probably something there where Dabo's just willing to develop him. And that culture there is so strong. My dad's a Clemson fan. He always talks about it. And so I think we're looking at like this is going to be the year where he's on the field full time. If he can handle these full time starting reps at a high level, we're going to be talking about him as like a Ruka around the 30s, 40s type range. If he can't, he's probably going to be sort of another like even I would compare him maybe to Alfred Collins. I mean, in terms of draft experience. If he doesn't really come through this year, we're probably going to be sitting waiting on him to pop up in the next few years. And if it could go either way, we haven't really seen enough to know for sure. But I'm excited about him. I thought his hands were strong and his length is exciting. So, not much else to think about there.
Yeah, 6'4", 320, obviously going to be an impact in the run game at the nose tackle spot. But I thought he was impactful at the pass rusher as well, to where he could kind of collapse the pocket and create an impact, maybe not necessarily generate a lot of sacks, but just creating some chaos up at the middle. So now it's about, like you said, kind of proving that he can stay on the field for most downs and proving that he can be an asset on the defensive line, whether it's against the run or as a pass rusher, and being able to stick around in a full-time role, having that conditioning. The gun charge, it's something, but it's also something that teams will very easily overlook if the talent's there. So I think he'll be fine. It's just now, probably one of the wider range of outcomes for whether, he kind of proves himself or if he kind of struggles. But I think he has the talent to prove himself. He has some really nice quickness at the snap that I think benefits his play and makes it to where he can really kind of create some nice moments for himself, both against the run or against the pass. He has athleticism. He works himself outside the play a little bit, but I think that's just something that you kind of have to hone in on and kind of iron out in his game. So I don't know, the potential's there, but now it's just like we said, like 80 times now. It's just now Can we prove it? Can we see it throughout the year? Consistent play-to-play basis. And I think he has it in his bag. But moving forward now to the next tier, I'd say, these first four guys, all very good. But I feel like now we're breaking into this legendary part of the defensive line class. And we're starting out with our eighth ranked guy, Nazir Stackhouse, defensive line for Georgia, 6'3, 324 pounds. He's kind of a nose tackle as well. He has a very nice size, very nice ability to anchor down, take on double blocks, and really not get wiped out of the play. He's got some great toughness to be able to shoot gaps and get to the football pretty well, whether it's laterally or just getting into the backfield. This is someone that I'm very excited about. Obviously, everyone knows about this Bulldogs defense and the overall roster talent that they have. Stackhouse has been a leader of this defensive line for a long time. He's going to be a star player this year for the Bulldogs in the front seven. I don't know. I have him as like a second and third round talent, but I feel like when you're a notable piece of a great program, it's very easy to kind of get a bump on your draft stock. So it wouldn't shock me if this is someone we're talking about early second round or maybe even late first if the right team comes calling.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that this is his year of headlining that Georgia defense. He's been sort of quietly been the leader along that defensive line for a couple of years, and I think he's always been a guy who is sort of, I wouldn't say underrated because he's been a headliner for that defense for a while, but he goes underappreciated as like a big time player on that defense because his stats aren't as flashy, but he is just a very solid nose. He's one of the more like get what you get guys in this class so far. He's a great run stopper with powerful hands who's playing for one of the best defenses in the country, who's going to be pushing for a national title this year. I mean, it's difficult to not think of him as a potential top end prospect. I think the only thing that's really stopping him is, unlike some of the other guys we're going to talk about later, I found him to be a little bit of a mediocre athlete. And part of that is because he's a nose tackle. You're not expecting these guys to be running 5.0s and 4.9s pretty consistently. That's not what they're there for. They're there to fill up gaps, get their body in there, stop runs, diagnose the alleys that these running backs are going to take. And Stackhouse does that all super proficiently. It's just he doesn't have that as high of a ceiling of being able to go to different alignments and rush the passer as consistently. I didn't think he had a very proficient pass rush bag. He wasn't doing a lot in terms of chop and swipe moves. He was just sort of getting his body in there, being in the right place at the right time, and stopping the run over and over again. He was the reason Georgia didn't put up much rushing yards in the SEC last year, even as there was just a collection of great backs. It's hard to be oh, this guy is 8th on the list this year. It's crazy. In other years he'd be top 3, but this year it's a stacked class. He's a great player. I think he'll do very well for himself in the league as a nose, sort of in that never the top end defensive tackle, but always a guy you're going to find on a roster, going to carve out a really good career for himself, stopping the run, sort of maybe a DJ Reader type. But he just doesn't have that type of versatility and upside that the other guys in this class have. But I think as far as a floor prospect goes, you couldn't ask for much better from a nose tackle than Nazir Stackhouse.
Yeah, I love his floor. And I think it's also worth noting this is a guy that, despite being like a run stuffing type of defensive tackle, he stays on the field for almost every down for the Bulldogs. So this is a guy that I think can kind of have that intrigue. And I think he's someone that is going to be safely a contributing player in the NFL. It's just, teams love to see the pass rush ability. So there are some guys that will probably go a little bit higher on the board, even if they're a little bit riskier as selections. And, speaking of one, our number 7 guy, Shamar Turner, 6'3", 289 pounds, but there's been rumors that he's already in the 300-pound range. Walter Nolen transferred out of Texas A&M. I think this guy is going to kind of step in and fill his role to a T. And I really liked his play. Last year, he was on fire, generating plenty of sacks off the edge for the Aggies, and he just showed some great athleticism. With the frame, you wouldn't expect the type of bend that he has, the ability to work around the corner and get to the backfield, but he was just firing off the snap, getting around offensive tackles, and just getting to the football on a play-to-play basis. This is someone that was consistently making noise, someone that was talked about as a potential first-rounder last year, ended up going back to school, so maybe the grades weren't there in terms of what the NFL was saying, or maybe, he just wanted to go back to the Aggies, but now he's kind of transformed as more of an interior guy than maybe guy that's operating out on the edge. Probably still going to get some looks in both spots, but this is one of the more exciting hybrid edge rushers in this class that could be one of the more exciting players in this class as a whole.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think his athleticism for that 290 size last year was very impressive. If he can hold that as he's moving up into the 300 range, which I know you mentioned he's rumored to do, I would love to see it. I think that was kind of what I was worried about when I was watching him on tape. Is Texas A&M has a history of these kind of like tweener types, like the DeMarvin Wheels of this world and all those types of guys who just sort of like aren't quite developed enough at either position to make waves at an NFL level. So I think Turner's making a smart move if the rumors are true, getting to 300. I hope he preserves some of that athleticism. I think he was very explosive as a process. I loved that bend that you mentioned. I thought he got around tackles very well. I think once you move him to interior, I think he'll be one of the more explosive guys in the middle there. And especially like in terms of guys who can keep up with athleticism and guards, I think it'll be difficult to not let him through and have him fill up these running lanes and have him give interior pressure. I think the SEC should be frightened by him getting up to 300 pounds because you can't just rely on him being slow at the edge anymore and like put him up against that, like get him against these athletic tackles and sort of hope he doesn't get there. But I think at times I would have liked to see him a little more in tune with the instincts. I felt like at times with his run stopping at edge, he took the wrong hole or he wasn't able to, keep pace, well, not keep pace, but keep like his head in the game on in tune with what play was coming. I felt like at times he was biting on like play fakes and play action. But I think that's just going to take another year of development. He's going to have another year at college. He's going to have another year with the Aggies, and sort of get his head back in the game. I think it was a good choice to take that extra year, and I think especially now that Walter Nolan's out of there, he has the chance to be a headline defensive tackle for a team that everyone is like really excited about the potential about with the new coaching staff and Wegman coming in and like hopefully he's going to be healthy the full year this year. I don't know. Texas A&M is going to be a team to watch, and I think that defense is going to be a great unit.
Yeah, I mean, no draft class is the same, but I think of like Keon White, where the athleticism and the size was there, and he was going early second. But Keon White was a little less athletic in terms of bend and just the ability to kind of corner as an edge rusher, and he was a little older. So I would assume Turner has a lot of intrigue from the league and is someone that could very easily kind of work himself into that first round discussion. Moving forward now to our sixth ranked guy, and that is Walter Nolen, a former Texas A&M Aggie who's now transferred to Ole Miss, and he's someone that I think is a little bit more of a risk. I think the ceiling's there, but I do think the floor is a little bit lower than some of these other guys. But he's someone that I really do like. 6'3", 300 pounds. Obviously, he was one of the top recruits whenever he came into the college football game and has kind of made an impact from the jump. He's someone that they had operating both the defensive end, defensive tackle, and he was making flashes in both regards. Extremely quick, very nice leverage, and he fights through contact extremely well. And I like that ability for him. I think the pass rush upside is there. I think everything in terms of traits and just like flashes is there. I do think that the overall play strength and just the ability to kind of like operate as a like 300 listed guy is going to kind of hurt him whenever the class is filled with like Deone Walker, who's 6'6", 350, Mason Graham, who's like 6'4", 320, Kenneth Grant, who's like 6'3", 340. Like they're all just massive, like dominant athletes. And then Nolan's like 300. If you watch them all together, it's like you just I don't know. The guy looks small because of it, and it's like ridiculous. But Nolan's still like a very talented, very exciting defensive tackle, and someone that I think is going to be a headliner name in this class and a big part of Mississippi season. But I don't know. I do think that he kind of takes a backseat to some of these other defensive tackles in this class.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that his length, his frame, his profile, I think looking at him the same way you look at like these high school players in terms of like you're just building off of traits, you'll get a very good look out of Nolan because I think, he's still kind of the same type of guy he was in high school. He's a big time athlete with great length and was racking up sacks like at the high school level. These days he's still pretty good about getting a sack numbers. And I think it's partially because he's still very explosive. I think he generates a lot of shock at the point of attack. But I think the real issue there is going to be partially his balance. I felt like I saw him hitting the ground a few times. I felt like his leverage was just a little wonky in terms of like getting down and like able to push guys backwards and not like sort of slide off them. I think his play strength could have been a little better there too. I think he just needs a little bit more, meat on his bones even. I mean, I know it's crazy to say about a 300-pound guy, but I would like to see him get a little stronger, like get a few more reps in that weight room. And I think Ole Miss will be interesting for him because he'll have what Uman Milan next to him next year, and I think those two could be potentially a very imposing duo at the college level next year and help each other get more sacks because they're going to be providing pressure from both ends. So it wouldn't shock me to see Nolan's like stats as a defensive tackle get higher, but I would like to see the play strength like come through better. I want to see more than just numbers on a stat sheet with him. I want to see improved play. I want to see like a little bit better in terms of chaining together moves. I felt like at times he was sort of a one move and go type of prospect. And I would like to see him get a little better in terms of, getting his hands in the chest instead of like, sliding off the shoulders. But I think there's a lot of potential there. I think Ole Miss will be a cool spot for him. But ultimately, it'll come down to how he plays this year. I think he's gonna be a like, high ceiling, low floor type of prospect, even as he's like getting these high sack numbers.
Very exciting piece for the Rebels to have on their defense. But moving forward now, a guy that I had ranked seventh and you had ranked fourth, Bear Alexander for the USC Trojans. What were your thoughts on watching Alexander, the 6'3", 315-pound defensive tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I saw great leverage. Everything we talked about with Nolen, or I talked about with Nolen, where I was worried about his leverage. I thought Alexander was consistently getting his hands in the right space at the right time. His explosiveness was very strong. He was a really strong run stopper too. I felt like he was underrated in terms of his lateral agility, in terms of finding that hole and getting there and filling the space. I think really what I'm worried about is that he sort of has the bull rush down and he's able to shoot his hands out, fire, move a guy into his chest, get him backwards, but he doesn't have a lot of other things going on. He's not winning with like a swim move or a club or anything like that. I felt like he was a little mediocre in terms of finding other ways to win besides a bull rush. But I think, and I also thought that in terms of his pass rush, he was kind of a rough finisher. I thought his tackling form, especially once he got into the backfield, was a little rough. I saw running backs and quarterbacks alike sort of just slide off him. But I think when you have that kind of power in your body and like you're that good at finding like the space you need to hit and getting that shock and pushing guys back, there's always going to be a space for that in the league. And I think it's going to be something that translates very well to the next level. I'm excited about Barry Alexander. I think there's also a little bit of a concern that he's transferred so many times. I think that's deeply overblown. Like he wants his bag. It's the NIL landscape, man. Like what are we going to do? Tell these kids not to get their money where they can get it? Like let's, as long as he's playing exciting football, I'm excited for him. So I don't know. I was excited about Bear. I think he's got a strong case to be one of the top run stoppers and defensive tackles in this draft class.
Yeah, I'm excited for his fit in the lean defense. Him and Anthony Lucas, I think, are guys that are going to benefit tremendously from getting out and away from Alex Grinch. So I'm excited for that. He's someone that has the ability and scrappiness that I think makes him very exciting on the interior. He loves to track the ball and he hunts it down with very impressive ability. He operates as the nose tackle on the depth chart, so I'm hoping he gets more versatility in terms of looks, getting more opportunities at 3 tech, 5 tech, just to showcase his athleticism and ability where he's going to be playing more in the NFL. But it doesn't matter too much. I do think that there may be some issues in terms of just like people like gassing up the character concerns because of the NIL situation. But I'm with you. I don't really care that much. People are going to be money motivated. Sometimes it's not that big a deal. He was still playing well, so I don't think it's like something to really dock him for. Overall, though, this is an exciting guy. I have him lower than Nolen, but still, this is someone that I think could very easily kind of work his way up into that first round discussion. Wouldn't shock me if, even if he kind of stays at a similar level, this is someone we're talking about as a second round, maybe early third type guy, because I think the impact and ability is there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm solidly second round on him right now. I'm excited for his prospects next year.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And now moving forward to our top four. And at number 4, we have Tyleik Williams. I have him ranked as my third ranked defensive tackle. You have him at number 5. I'm going to give my first thoughts. 6'2", 322 pounds. This is someone that I think is very explosive off the ball. You kind of look at him and you're just saying, man, this guy is huge, but he has that great athleticism to pair with it, that quickness and that just violence with his movement to where he is just jolting on offensive linemen and giving them a terrible time for the entire game. He has great power, great ability to explode and twitch, the ability to get into the backfield, get off of blocks, disengage, and find his way to the quarterback or to the running back and be able to make a stop on the play. This is someone that I'm very excited about. I know that Dane Brugler had ranked him, I think, as his defensive tackle number 2. He's very high on him. This is someone that I think could easily be like the ordinary defensive tackle 1, but there's just so many great defensive tackles in this class that I very much understand having him even as low as number 5. But man, this guy I think just has it all whenever you're asking for traits and abilities. The lower body is also very impressive. He takes on blocks well. He holds his ground and he's able to kind of continue to like stay in his gaps and clog up lanes. So where he's someone that's just, I don't know, he checks every box for me, and I think he's going to be someone we're talking about as a first round pick for sure. And now it's just how high can he really go in this class?
Yeah, I mean, I also thought he was great as an athlete. I thought his reactive athleticism was really strong. I thought he moved both downhill and side to side super well. I wrote him last year for Lindy's before he went back. My mistake. But in that issue, I compared him to Justin Matabike, and I was just and like that kind of guy who's just like, he's very solid. He has this great size and athleticism. Took Matabike a couple years to find that footing, but last year he had a monster season. I think Williams could easily come in on either side of those edges as being a great rotational guy, great like sort of solid starter type, to being a complete game wrecker. That explosive first step is really strong. I think he's a great tackler too. I thought he always finished his plays super well. I thought when he was clogging up alleys, he was very strong in getting the guy down himself. He didn't need a ton of linebacker support. Like I thought he was just a very, like trustworthy player, if that makes sense. I felt like very comfortable letting him rush the passer and get run stops. At time, I felt like he was a little like behind the curve in terms of diagnosing where the run was going to go, where the blockers were pulling out to, and sometimes he'd end up in the wrong lane and a guy would break off against him. But it wasn't something that I was so concerned about that I was knocking him down out of like day 2 or anything. I think this year he has high potential to be like a top 50 pick, probably on the higher end of top 50 than low. I think I would also like to see him work a little bit on like finding ways to get leverage. Like I think at times his timing was just a little off. I think he maybe could do a little better, like reacting to the snap and getting there and engaging super quickly. And then, maybe we'd have a few more like sacks in the stat sheet. But overall, I'm excited about his next year. I think Ohio State's going to be a team that's returning a lot of talent, like, and is going to be very strong. And I think Tyleik Williams is in particular going to highlight that defense for that team.
Yeah, he's an absolute stud. But speaking of studs, we're now moving forward to the part where we talk about the Michigan defensive tackles, the unfair tandem duo that just was, I mean, just ridiculous for the Wolverines as they went and won the championship. We're going to start with our third ranked defensive tackle, the nose tackle, 6'3, 340 pounds, Kenneth Grant, a guy that if you find the right clips, you might see him running like 30 yards downfield at like great speed. So just an absolute menace on the football field. You have him as your second ranked defensive tackle in this class. So I'll let you go ahead and start off with your thoughts on Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, I mean, he runs like a tight end for a guy who weighs like 340 pounds. It's nuts. Just so athletic. Feldman said he was running sub 5. I wouldn't shock me if he's hitting like Jordan Davis type numbers. I mean, we'll talk about Jordan Davis again, but I think just this nose tackle class is freaky athletic, and Kenneth Grant may be the most athletic of them. His strength profile is insane. He's always like he's getting shock in those hands like nobody else. I think his upside is just like otherworldly. I mean, like, but it's crazy, and it's crazy to say there's 2 defensive tackles in this class who have that kind of otherworldly nose tackle upside. And I think Michigan, being on Michigan next to the guy we're going to talk about next, is going to do great numbers for him. I think like it's limited him a little in terms of his game because I think he's become more of a guy who you trust to run stop, and he's great at it. He's got incredible instincts, but I think it has also limited his pass rush bag. I've got him sort of like in the top 20 grades, like probably pushing for top 10 this year. I think his upside is better than the other Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham, but I think like currently maybe Mason Graham's a little bit of a better player. I don't know. it's really hard for me to differentiate between these two guys, but Kenneth Grant in particular, just a great nose tackle, incredible athleticism, great instincts in the run game, has a lot of juice in pass rushing too. I felt like he's using a lot of that natural strength profile to get wins in the pass rush game. I would like to see him develop a few more moves in that bag to become a more three-dimensional player. But it's just one of those guys who I'm just like trying not to overthink. Like, sure, there's some technical refinement that could be, but he's a guy running that fast at that weight. It's going to be hard for me to be like, yeah, this guy is not going to be a first rounder. This guy's not going to be in the top 15. I don't know. It's just he's a can't miss guy for me.
Yeah, he's an absolute master of just like anchoring down and being immovable on the inside. He can also work outside and cover multiple lanes as a nose tackle, which I think is very valuable. This is pretty much like this Michigan defensive tackle group is pretty much what the Clemson Tigers had back when they had Wilkins and Lawrence out there. Like it's nearly the same where you have this nose tackle who's also just like a great athlete, so it's pretty much like a three tech as well. But then you also have this monstrous three tech tackle that's just able to do everything. So the Wolverines are very, very stacked on the defensive line. And I think that kind of worked against Grant a little bit. He was rotating out a lot for Jenkins last year, which I think will give him an opportunity to kind of prove himself more this season. But it also resulted in him being off the field a lot more than you probably want out of a top defense tackle prospect. But still, there's someone that I think every time he was on the field, there's very few flaws in his game, and he's very exciting. I'm thinking he's going to be a first round pick. Wouldn't shock me if he reunites with Jim Harbaugh, a team that desperately needs some run stuffing ability on the interior. I think it's a great fit. But whoever gets him is going to be very happy with what they've acquired, and I think he's going to be a great nose tackle in the league for a long, long time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's just a guy. It's difficult to argue against when you run that fast and are that big. Like, that kind of explosiveness translates pretty well to the NFL.
Yeah, so moving forward to our number 2 ranked defensive lineman, I had him at number 2. You had him at number 3. Mason Graham, again with the Wolverines, 6'3", 320 pounds. He just has incredible leverage. The frame is, I mean, you could put him on nose tackle and you'd probably be happy with his play. He's just got that strength and fight in him. He kind of has some flashes of like the grittier defensive linemen, but I feel like I said, Christian Wilkins is probably his best comparison. This is someone that I think just is going to get to the quarterback, get to the running back, make plays in the backfield, cause chaos, wreak havoc, and is just going to make play in, play out every single time. The Wolverines benefited from it. He was a stud for the defense, probably one of the best players, if not the best. They have a lot of stars on this team that are returning, but I think Mason Graham may be the headliner for this group because he is just a do-it-all defense tackle that is no doubt, in my mind, going to be picked in the first half of the first round.
I'm with you. I think he's probably also in that top 16 range for me. I mean, great closing speed, already picked up a great set of pass rush moves over his Michigan career for such a young guy. I feel like he uses his arms well. I feel like he's just a guy who the length is really working for him. He's able to, like do his swim move and just push through guys and get him back and get right into the pocket, collapse it. It's pretty much over for that whole conference. I'm really excited about his game. I think you're super right in that he's very versatile. He's kind of a do-it-all defensive tackle, like you said. I'm not worried about him like losing ground in any of those roles. I think he's someone who he was on the field a lot for Michigan and he was doing everything he needed to do. Like it never felt like there was a drop in his play from one like facet of the game to another. I felt like he was a very steady run stopper, pass rusher, moving downhill, moving laterally, just like sort of a guy who was a solid like 8 out of 10 at every skill. And that's a guy you always look for in the NFL who's going to make an impact, going to be able to, stick it out with the best of these guys. I would like to see him do a little better in terms of generating some leg drive. I think he's got a little bit of a tough anchor that like he could stand to gain some lower body strength. But other than that, that's a real nitpick for me. I think he's just a great player, does it all very well. Someone you trust to handle business down in Michigan. I think this will be a great year for him. It wouldn't. I think him teaming up with Grant, it'll be a great year. I think Michigan's if they can get that quarterback situation together, they have the talent to go for another championship.
Yeah, and I wrote down as well that he gets off of his base a little too easily. I don't think it's necessarily an issue as much of like anchoring or strength. It's just more he's so like excited to kind of like fly up and he plays like so out of control at times where I think it's easy for him to kind of end up without that balance issue. But I think the strength is there for sure. And he's someone that, with the NFL polish, I have no doubts about his success. But now moving forward to our top ranked lineman, and that's Deone Walker, 6'6, 350 pounds. We've seen him drop into coverage. We've seen him play nose tackle, play defensive end, work 3 tech, 5 tech, off of the edge, stand up, hand in the dirt. Doesn't matter. He is able to do it all for the Wildcats. And he has such rare size and athleticism that I wrote down like he's one of those guys that the coaches just like start messing around almost. They like just let's see what he can do. And it's almost like similar to when Alabama had Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy, and they were like playing rock paper scissors to determine who would run what route because you just knew it was going to be great regardless. Like that's kind of what Kentucky has with Deone Walker, where they're just like, whatever. Let's see him drop into coverage this play. Like they don't like expect him to be this great coverage guy, but it's like, oh man, he's just so like miraculous at what he does play to play that we just want to see it because it's just fun. Like this is someone that is just so he's a unicorn when it comes to like just his ability. Like 6'6", 350, you're saying, oh, he's probably like this like really bulky, like anchor down nose tackle that can just like completely clog up 1 to 2 lanes, and that's fine. But no, this is a guy that is like making an impact off of the edge, disrupting tackles, guards, centers. It doesn't matter. And he's going to find his way to the football. I'm worried that there's maybe a little bad weight, like his belly hangs over a little bit more than you probably want for some of the other guys where we see like 350 and it looks like they're almost like 280 because they just wear it so well. That could be a question. Maybe like conditioning is like a problem for Walker. I don't know. I don't want to like just create narratives about the guy that just don't exist. But that's like really the only thing that I could like maybe kind of nitpick at for him. But he's just an absolute superstar, and I think he's going to be a stud in the league.
Yeah, when you're dropping a 350-pound guy into coverage, you're kind of at the point where you just don't need to see anything else. Like the fact that you can put this massive behemoth of a human being into a situation where he's carrying a tight end down on a fucking in route. Like who cares? Like it's just a guy who can like you don't see 350-pound guys who are playing it all ever. He's playing every alignment. I saw him at every position during my watch. I was shocked. He's easily the most fun guy to watch this year. And I'm honestly a little worried that I was having so much fun watching him that I'm like taking it into my account. But it's just like you said, he's a unicorn. There's no one like him. I mean, like I'm the first thing that comes to mind is Jordan Davis. He might be more athletic than Jordan Davis. Like Jordan Davis was dropping into coverage. He didn't look like that. Like I don't know, just pound for pound, there's no one like him. It's like we're watching Calvin Johnson as a DT to me. Like it was nuts. His mass incredible. Like sure, could cut a little bit in the belly, but if he's still 340, who running a defensive end like he's Aiden Hutchinson, whatever, man. Like whatever. His agility and bend for a nose is, or someone who is profiled to be a nose. I've like got written down for a nose over and over again because I think that's where the NFL is going to want him because he's that big. But honestly, if he can get with a defensive coach that's as creative as his Kentucky defensive coaches, he could be playing fucking anywhere for all I know. Like I don't know, just super excited about his prospects in the league. Just already expecting him. I'm struggling not to put him as my number one prospect for the entire like board of players in this class. He's just special. You just get that feeling in your stomach when you're watching him, like, oh my God, we're watching a generational type guy. Like, and I mean, these types of big dudes like come around every year, and we've seen some good movers recently. I think Deone Walker is in a tier above the rest. I don't know. The only other thing I've seen is that he's such a good mover that sometimes his weight's a little too much for him and he balances and falls over. But like, if you can put him pretty much anywhere and you're able to play this 350-pound dude at defensive end and you just do it and he overwhelms every tackle you've ever played against, it's over. Like, what are you going to do? That guy's going to get like 10 sacks a season in the league. It's over. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. He's just great. It's an incredible time to be a defensive tackle watcher.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to see Aaron Donald retire, but there is plenty of incoming talent to where maybe someone can kind of take his spot as like the top interior defensive lineman. But look, that is all we have for you here on this 2 Minute Drill podcast. That was the defensive tackle class. Next time you see us, we'll talk about the edge and linebacker class. Another group that has plenty of exciting names, so be on the lookout for it. But I'm Michael Rochman. That's Dean Bruce, and that's the 2-minute drill. Take care, guys.
Have a good one.